So this is the core budget. This funds everything except Medicaid fraud compliance and our Safe Kit. Absent any questions, I'll move to page 18. This is an NDI for our Public Protection and Criminal Appeals Division. Last year, we had 473 appeals. We filed 412 briefs, argued more than 100 cases in the Missouri Court of Appeals and Missouri Supreme Court. As of January 1st, 2025, we've got 1,367 pending appeals. As this body knows, we handle 100% of felony appeals. Cops catch bad guys, prosecutors locking them up, and then we defend those convictions on appeal on behalf of the state. So the volume and workload has increased over time. We have special prosecutors that prosecute across the state of Missouri. They civilly commit sexually violent predators. Most of the cases that we were involved in at the trial court level are child sex cases, sexual assault cases, and murders. So we're putting the worst of the worst away. In 2024, we had cases in 28 different counties across the state, 130 counts, convicted 5 murders, and this is really about supporting some of our rural prosecutors, many of whom are still part-time. So it's a state resource that we deploy in the fight against violent crime. Operational needs have increased, and thus the NDI. Moving to page 13, this is our governmental affairs and litigation and employment law section. As this body recalls, we split out our employment law attorneys. Deep analysis revealed that 65% of our civil cases against the state are employment law actions against the state agencies. As those state agencies have grown, as our constitutional amendment has added a state agency, our liability has increased. Those cases have also become more complex in that there are more public interest groups filing more class actions lawsuits against the state today. And so as those operational needs change and grow because of the complexity of litigation grows and the number of cases grows, we need to meet those operational needs. I want to point out that in our civil defense section, a new mentorship program has allowed us to obtain 7 complete defense verdicts in employment law actions against the state that saved the state north of $50 million. Additionally, we had 12 cases that we were able to get dismissed before they even got to trial, either a dispositive motion on the pleadings or summary judgment. Again, that's an enormous savings to the public fisc. We've got, in governmental affairs right now, we typically run about 1,300 cases per year. This year, we've got 1,500 cases. So you've seen an increase in growth in those cases. We've also seen a 10 to 15% increase in our caseload in our litigation section. But one win that I want to point out there is our defense of the Tort Victims Compensation Fund, where we saved the state $124 million by winning that case. Barring questions in our civil section. Moving to tab 16, this is our Consumer Protection Division. As this body will recall, 2 years ago, I requested a nominal increase in our Appropriations Authority out of the Merchandising Practices Revolving Fund in order to fund 6 additional FTE that were already on the books. In our Consumer Division, that's ramped up our consumer protection work. I would point out also that the nature of consumer protection work has changed over time. In the 1990s, what we typically saw were individual entities that were regionally isolated, that were defrauding Missouri consumers. Now we see more complex scams involving electronic means of communication. So again, you see a broader and a more complex caseload within our consumer division. This body approved a nominal increase in appropriations authority out of the MPRF. My first year in office, we recovered $32 million in settlements and judgments on behalf of the state. You funded 6 additional FTE that were already on the books. The return on the investment this last year was we recovered north of $400 million in settlements and judgments on behalf of the state. So proud of the work we're doing in our Consumer Protection Division. This is not general revenue.
Yeah, Attorney General, when you give us those numbers, how long does it take the state, probably in many cases, to actually end up seeing those dollars? And are we continuing going to court? And I'm not playing this for my own knowledge.
Yeah.
Wonder $400 million, and it might take us 40 years to get the 400.
It might take several years. I would say 2 to 4 years on average, and that's an anecdotal estimation. But we expedite specifically individual recovery for individual Missouri consumer
For
victims.
Missourians first before the state.
Thank you, sir. Barring any other questions, moving to tab 19, This is our labor division, so 10-year, yeah, I believe it was in 2014, the General Assembly changed the statute as it relates to disability, so no longer can claimants make claims for partial permanent disability. Now, the only claim is full permanent disability based on 7 statutory enumerated factors. When you change a statute, you wash away a sediment of case law that interpreted the previous statute. Thus, we're doing more appellate work because all of these cases using those 7 enumerated factors get appealed, and those are cases of first impression. So my labor division is doing more work on the appellate side as the courts interpret the new statute that's now been in place for about 10 years. So we're just trying to catch up with that. Barring any questions on our labor section, moving to tab 22. This is our solicitor office. This is the top appellate attorneys in the state that defend the statutes enacted by the Missouri General Assembly. Barring any questions on solicitor's office, moving to page 25. This is the governor's retention schedule for which we are supportive. We've seen a symbiotic relationship between recruitment, retention, and mentorship. Those have all helped improve our staffing levels. We were hovering at a 25% vacancy rate. When I took over, we've reduced that down to single digits. Feel like we're pretty close to fully staffed, even though that's a somewhat of a moving target. Retention is the next piece. When I took over, we had a lot of privates and a lot of lieutenants, not a lot of sergeants. In 2022, about 67 attorneys left the office. 2023, we stabilized, about 44 attorneys left the office. I'm proud to say last year we only had 20 attorneys leave the office. And again, that's directly attributable to our ability to recruit talent and thus manage a better caseload for our attorneys. And then our mentorship program that has resulted in those 7 complete defense verdicts. It's an innovative, first of its kind in the nation. We're providing better training and mentorship for our attorneys, which is causing them to stay longer and work harder.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing this up, Mr. Attorney General. I actually had some questions just a little bit about recruitment and retention. You brought that up in your opening statements. And then as well as we go through these NDIs, we see here often that the need for to fill those current FTEs, and that's the ask of the salary increase. So help me out. In your core right now, we have 340 FTEs, and how many of those positions are currently filled?
Right now, Right now, we have 25 lawyer vacancies. I think we have.
In what divisions?
That's across all sections in the office.
Okay.
And then I would have to double check the support staff. I believe we have 6 investigator positions, 2 paralegals, and about 6 legal secretary positions.
So 25 attorney vacancies, and then in terms of support staff, how many total?
I think we have 6 investigators, 2 paralegals, and 5 or 6 legal secretaries.
Okay.
That we're currently-
Okay, and where is this, in terms of recent trends, are you gaining some grounds here? You mentioned how important it is to continue to recruit, but also retain.
Yeah. And you're right. And one of the things we've identified is the cyclical nature of hiring attorneys for a government law firm of this size is really challenging. As y'all know, most of our employees are first-year attorneys that just graduated law school, especially given our pipeline for recruitment out of Mizzou Law with our practicum that we started. The issue there is those students graduate in May, but they don't get their bar results until August. So if I have an attorney that leaves in October of this year, I may not fill the position until August. And so there's always going to be a period of lapse. It's as if a check has been cut, but it hasn't been cleared the bank yet, so I'm still showing that money on the bank account. But we feel very positive about the trend lines overall, that our overall consistent vacancy rate has declined in spite of that kind of cyclical nature of our hiring.
Okay, so increasing salaries, so we're beginning attorneys at what now? If the NDIs are approved?
Well, and let me be clear, our NDIs are not raises for our attorneys. Our NDIs are about filling FTE that are on the books but are unfunded currently. And again, that's about meeting the operational needs of the office, given the increase in litigation and the increase in the complexity and time involved in that litigation.
Okay, then help me out then. In terms of your unexpended funds, you have tremendous amount of unexpended funds over the last several fiscal years. So what is that attributed to? And so we have a lot of unexpended funds, and we're asking for overall several more $1 million for your.
And unexpended, are you talking about the 2 million lapse in the PS line?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that again, and that 2 million lapse is directly attributable to the fact that I can't fill a position I can't fill most of my positions until August. So like if somebody quits today, there's going to be a period of lapse that's going to be reflected on our books at the end of the year regardless. That being said, and I'm sorry, did I answer your question?
Yes, more or less, but okay, and then help me out just overall. I know we're not quite through all of the divisions. I know we still have Medicaid fraud, a few others. How much of an increase are you asking for overall for your budget?
2.2. Yeah, 2.2 million, sorry. And the distinction is what I'm asking for that's in the GovRec, and then what the governor has approved or is asking for as part of the his retention schedule that we're supportive of as well. And so I just want to break those out.
Okay. Since I'm asking questions now, I'm going to ask my last one. Where are we, real quickly, on the backlog from Sunshine cases?
Certainly, and I have those numbers with me. Let me find that. Do you have those on that? Oh, yeah, here we go. So, overall numbers, we've received 1,465 Sunshine requests since I've taken office. We have closed 1,390. We have a total of 75 pending from 2024 and 2025. And 40 of those are from 2024 and 35 are as of this year. So we feel confident that we have cleared the backlog.
Okay, so 75 still pending from 2024.
40 pending from 2024, 75 total.
Okay.
We've received 35 since the first of this year.
And you continue to have attorneys dedicated to just that task?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. What about, so still a pretty significant backlog, and Sunshine Law, correct me if I'm wrong, you have how many days to respond?
3 business days to offer either offer the responsive records or provide a time cost estimate of when the records will be made available.
Okay, and so we still have a pretty significant backlog there, so that's something concerning that honestly, didn't exist for a very long time until I think 2023 when it really started to expand. So concerned why that still lingers today.
The 75?
Yeah,
Well, I will concede that I would rather have 0 pending requests and would rather turn them out more rapidly. But the problem is the complexity of the records we have to review because so many of them are legal files. And so a request may trigger a response of 50,000 documents that we have to go through line by line to ensure we're not breaching attorney-client privilege. And so it's more difficult for a law firm to respond to Sunshine requests than, say, an entity that doesn't have a basis for closure, isn't morally and legally responsible for protecting that kind of confidential information.
okay. Appreciate the
Yes, ma'am.
conversation. Thank you.
I think we're on page 29. Is that right, Rhonda? 29, yeah. And this is our Medicaid Fraud Compliance Unit. This is our unit that protects stewards of state resources and makes sure our most vulnerable have access to state health care. Pending any questions, going to 36. This is our NDI for our Medicaid Fraud Compliance Unit. We're asking for 1 additional investigator. This is a 75-25 Fed match. But we believe that we can increase our investigations and, again, continue to protect our most vulnerable in the taxpayer dollars with that additional investigator. Moving on to 39. This is our Safe Kit initiative. 39 is the governor's pay plan. 42. This is our Safe Kit initiative. We've seen enormous success here.
Thank you. I'm just curious on the Medicaid part. With the federal government doing what they're doing, do they prosecute cases here? Where does the responsibilities break down?
It's a great question, Senator, and there's multiple lines of jurisdiction that overlap. And so we prosecute a lot of cases that could be federal cases, but we take it on because we want to recover the money on behalf of the state of Missouri and protect Missourians. And at the end of the day, the federal government has supported resources for our office to be able to do that. The federal government certainly could prosecute their own cases. Most of the times they defer to us.
So if you prosecute a case that could be federal and you win, the funds that you recover, do they go Fed state just the same as the funds do that are being spent?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Barring any other questions, I believe I'm on tab 48. Is that right? Yeah, 48. This is Governor's retention schedule. Barring any questions, tab 51, sorry, didn't wear my glasses. This is our Violent Crimes Task Force. This is the specialized unit within our prosecutors that really focus on the homicide cases. Barring any questions, moving to tab 57. This is Governor's retention schedule. Tab 60, this is Attorney General Trust Fund. This is a pass-through account. So right now, there's 1.2 million we identified in a tobacco escrow account that we're transferring back to general revenue. So this is just the means in which we do that. Moving on to tab 65. This is our court cost fund that we pay for filings in court. Tab 70, this is our antitrust fund. And that's it.
All right. Thank you, General. Any other questions from the committee before we move on to the prosecutor's office underneath that same office? Doesn't look like it. Mr. Moore, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee.
Good morning, Senator. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm Darrell Moore, Missouri Office of Prosecution Services. This should be fairly quick. In terms of the core budget on page 2, our core budget is actually $48,747 less than last year. That's only because I had to transfer money from House Bill 12 that funds my office to House Bill 13 to cover additional rent for space that we have added in terms of training and meeting space. So that's with the facilities management, but otherwise core is the same. On page 10 is the new decision item. Brief history, I know Senator Williams will be familiar with it. In 2023, members of the General Assembly, both parties approached my office with the idea of setting up a statewide conviction review unit, since only the large offices, St. Louis City, St. Louis County, Jackson County, could have them, and most of the other offices are too small to do it. I was approached toward the end of that session by Cody Smith and the Budget Committee offering to give me money. I shouldn't say give, that sounds bad, doesn't it? Appropriate money.
Well, it sounds counterintuitive to the experience I've had with the former chairman of the House.
Well, and I would say to you, Mr. Chairman, I was surprised when I was approached and offered an appropriation to set up the office. I declined for 2 reasons, which makes my state representative, Darren Chappell, happy. The primary reason was I had no statutory authority to set up such a thing, and I wasn't going to go venturing out on my own to do it. And number 2, I hadn't looked at it, so I had no idea what staff we would actually need. So in 2024, I know with the help of Senator Williams in the Senate and other folks, we had legislation passed setting up the conviction review unit. Unfortunately, there was no appropriation to actually set it up. So that's why this new decision item is this year. I know that the governor did not recommend it, but I would say to you, I can't set it up if I am not appropriated funds to set it up. I know GR is tight, as I testified in front of House Budget yesterday. If I could even receive funding for one attorney and the investigator, it would at least give us a beginning to see what the actual need would be for the office, and whoever succeeds me next year can come back and ask you for more money, if they need the money. But this is a worthy unit. We need it. We've already had inquiries about it, so I would respectfully ask that you all consider at least funding the one attorney and one investigator. On page 13,
Mr.
Give us,
Chair.
yeah, give us just a second. Senator Williams.
Yeah, thank you for raising that issue. And just for the committee's sake, we do have new members on the committee this year. The conviction review unit would basically allow prosecutors to determine innocence for those that may have been potentially wrongfully convicted of a crime. We've seen in other offices that do have this unit, it has been very successful, to the extent a gentleman by the name of Lamar Johnson was able to be free due to a crime he did not commit and was able to walk his daughter down the aisle for her wedding. So we've seen some very positive stories that have come from this. And these are people that have served 20, 30, 40 years of their life just to be determined that they were innocent. So we were very proud to work on that, and I hope that the committee understands that putting some money towards this could be very helpful to our state, especially addressing crimes or situations of this issue where those may have been wrongfully convicted.
Again, going back to, I forgot what page it was, page 13, the new decision item. This is simply for E&E. I only have 2 positions funded out of general revenue. The rest are grant funds or other funds, the court surcharge. You all help. The general revenue fund funds my domestic violence, sexual offense, special prosecutor that goes around the state helping train prosecutors and actually helping try cases, and also our child abuse resource prosecutor. This is the first time in the 7 years that I've appeared in front of this committee that I've asked for any increase in E&E, but travel expenses for those 2 positions has just increased over the last 3 or 4 years, and I see that the governor did recommend that, so I'd respectfully ask for that $7,000. And then finally, of course, on page 15 is the governor's pay plan, which we support.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Any questions from the committee for the prosecutor? Seeing none. Appreciate it. Next up, we got the Department of Economic Development. Michelle Hadaway, whenever you're ready.
Good morning, Chairman, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Michelle Hadaway, Director for the Missouri Department of Economic Development. The department is focused on providing businesses the resources they need in order to achieve success, build sustainable growth, strengthening our state's communities, and promoting Missouri as an ideal place to visit, help develop a talented and skilled workforce, and maintaining a high quality of life for our fellow Missourians. My team is here to answer any questions that you guys have. For the sake of time and be respectful of your time, today I'll be going over any ongoing core changes and NDIs, and then all the one-times from fiscal year 25 have been reduced. I won't be touching those unless you'd like me to go into more detail. Okay. So if you turn to page 2 and 7, this is the governor's pay plan. I won't go into too much detail. You guys have heard about that. If you turn to page 10, this is the regional engagement core reduction of WIOA-funded PS, E&E, and FTE tied to the NDI on page 18 for $355,000 fund switch from federal dollars to GR. 5 FTE, these 5 FTE are currently unfunded, and they will be positions that will fill in Kansas City, St. Louis, Central, North, and Southwest Missouri. If you turn to page 45, the NDI is not recommended by the governor. So let's turn to page 84. This is an NDI for CHIPS semiconductor, restoring funding as ongoing instead of one time. If you turn to page 113, this is a core reduction for the Community Development Block Grant, or CDBG. These are federal dollars of over $11 million in excess authority that already has been expended. If you turn to page 129 and 136, this is an NDI for the Missouri Main Street transfer. Last year, it was put in as one time. This is a request as an ongoing transfer request, and then the NDI to coincide with it. If you turn to page 176, this is a core reduction for the Missouri Community Service Commission, or MCSC. These are ARPA grants that are now closed, and the remaining funds have been transferred to the formula funding and in the normal MCSC budget. Turn to page 209. This is Missouri One Start. It's a core reduction over $2 million in excess spend authority. If you turn to page 224 and 231, these NDIs are regarding upskill, but they were not recommended by the governor, so we'll continue on to page 241. This NDI was not recommended by the governor. We have questions? Nope. Okay. Page 244, this is a statewide planning grant. This was reduced to zero as we are expending those funds, and the grant is currently closing out. If you turn to page 262, National Security Crossroads, again, we've expended the funds, or the grant's closing out. Page 277, NDI for tourism. This is a GR transfer increase. The governor recommended an increase of a GR transfer of $1 million to coincide with the NDI on page 287 for event sponsorship. Page 305, this is an NDI. Governor recommended an increase of $500,000 to the Route 66 Commission. And then turn to page 301. This is an NDI for $3 million for the FIFA World Cup for marketing and or sponsorship. And page 325, this is the Emergency Solutions Grant Program. core reduction to zero as all funds have been paid out from HUD to the Missouri Housing Development Commission.
Well done.
Okay.
Can't imagine there's any questions from the committee for the Department of Economic Development, but if you do have them, this would be the time. Does
Thank
not
you for
appear.
your
Michelle,
time.
thank you.
Appreciate it.
That was great.
You
No,
guys
that was
have any
great.
questions, let us know.
Yeah,
okay?
thank you. Thank you. Appreciate you guys being here. That will conclude our appropriations hearing for this morning. Thanks, guys.
Director Dixon.